Before start this heartwarming love story, please tell us in the comment box, where are you watching from? We'd love to hear that from you. Jasmine Sandy was the kind of girl you couldn't forget, even if you tried. Her beauty was something out of a dream. Not just pretty, but breathtaking, almost unreal. Her long, golden brown hair cascaded down her back like a river of silk, shimmering under the sunlight. Her soft caramel skin glowed warmly, making her look like she was kissed by the sun itself. And her eyes, oh, her eyes, bright hazel, deep and endless, as if they carried every secret the world had ever hidden. They were the kind of eyes that could make a man lose his words and a woman lose her pride. In the small town of Crestwood, beauty like Jasmine's was both a blessing and a curse. Everywhere she went, heads turned. Men stared, sometimes with admiration, sometimes with hunger. Women whispered, sometimes with jealousy, sometimes with cruelty. "She thinks she's better than us," they'd hiss behind her back. "She's nothing but trouble," others would mutter, lips twisted in bitterness. To some, Jasmine was a prize to be won. To others, she was a threat to be destroyed. But to no one was she simply a girl with dreams, fears, and a fragile heart. Nobody asked about the girl behind the beauty. Nobody cared to see the battles she fought every single day just to be seen, truly seen. Jasmine wore a quiet sadness like a second skin. She smiled when she was supposed to. She laughed when it was expected. But inside she felt invisible, trapped in a world that only loved the surface of her and never the soul beneath. She worked 2 jobs, not because she wanted to, but because she had no choice. In the mornings, she arranged flowers at Daisy's Blossoms, a cozy little shop that smelled of roses and rain. She loved working with flowers. They didn't judge her, didn't whisper, didn't expect anything from her, but tenderness. By night, she wiped tables and poured coffee at Maggie's Diner, a dusty old place with flickering lights and regulars who always stared too long. At the diner, she wore a faded apron and a tired smile, moving through the smoke and noise like a ghost. No matter how hard she worked, some customers treated her like she was nothing more than a pretty decoration behind the counter. Her dream was never grand. It was simple, pure, heartbreaking. She wanted love, not love that craved her beauty, not love that wanted to show her off like a trophy, but a love that cradled her heart gently, whispered, "I see you," and meant it. But dreams like that felt far away in a town like Crestwood, a town that judged people not just by how they looked, but by the color of their skin, the money in their pockets, the stories of their past. Jasmine knew she didn't belong in the fairy tales they believed in. She wasn't the girl they pictured for a millionaire or a hometown hero. She was the girl people admired from a distance but never chose to love out loud. She learned early to build walls, smile, nod, stay polite. Hide the ache when someone said, "A girl like you should know her place." Hide the sting when someone said, "Pretty faces don't need dreams." But some nights when the world felt heavy, Jasmine would slip away after her shift ended. She would walk alone under the velvet sky, her shoes silent against the cracked sidewalks. And when she reached the hill just beyond the diner, she would sit, legs pulled to her chest, and stare up at the endless, uncaring stars. "Please," she would whisper into the dark, "just once, let someone see the real me." The wind would brush against her face as if trying to comfort her, but it was never enough. Her loneliness was a cold, quiet thing. It lived in her, breathed with her, shadowed every hope she dared to have. Still, she never gave up completely. Some tiny flame deep inside her kept burning, stubborn and desperate. She believed, maybe foolishly, maybe bravely, that somewhere in the vast, wide world, someone was meant for her. Someone who would see her heart first and her face second. Someone who would make her feel less alone. Little did she know, the universe had already started moving pieces in her favor. Little did she know, destiny was already racing toward her, in the form of a man she had never met, but who would change everything she thought she knew about love. On a rainy night that seemed no different from the others, while the diner windows rattled and the wind howled like a lonely wolf, Jasmine wiped down the counters, her body aching with exhaustion. She tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear, unaware that at that very moment, A stranger's car was breaking down just a few miles away. Unaware that fate was steering him straight toward her. Bentley Maxwell. The town would soon learn that name, and so would Jasmine. Not with fear, but with a heart that would soon beat so wildly, so powerfully, she would wonder how she ever lived before him. But tonight, as she locked up the diner and hugged her thin jacket tighter around her shoulders, Jasmine was just a lonely girl with a fragile heart, making a silent wish under the cold and different stars. A wish that, by some miracle, was finally about to come true. Bentley Maxwell was the kind of man who made headlines just by existing. Born into a world of silk sheets, golden chandeliers, and private jets, he had never known a day without luxury. Heir to the Maxwell tech empire, the company that powered half the country's communication systems, Bentley had everything a man could want, or so the world believed. They saw his sharp suits, his tailored smiles, the confident swagger of someone who had never been told no. They whispered about his icy blue eyes, so cold they could freeze fire. They envied his millions, his sports cars, his breathtaking penthouse overlooking the city skyline. But nobody saw the loneliness that sat with him at every lavish party. Nobody noticed the hollowness behind his picture-perfect life. The truth was, Bentley Maxwell was a king trapped in a glass castle, admired, envied, but utterly, painfully alone. Every deal he closed, every award he accepted, every flash of the paparazzi's cameras only deepened the emptiness inside him. Is this all there is? He would sometimes wonder late at night, staring out at the city lights, feeling like a ghost in his own life. He didn't know what he was looking for. He only knew he hadn't found it. That night, as rain battered the dark highways, Bentley was driving through the sleepy town of Crestwood. It wasn't a place he ever meant to visit, just a shortcut on his way to another empty business meeting. But fate had other plans. The rain grew heavier, turning the roads slick and dangerous. Bentley's luxury car, a custom midnight black Aston Martin, sputtered and coughed. A blinking red light on the dashboard, a shudder under the hood. Before he could curse, the car died completely, right outside a battered old diner with a flickering neon sign, Maggie's Diner. Frustrated and soaked from the storm, Bentley had no choice but to pull his coat tighter and trudge inside. The bell above the door jingled weakly as he pushed through. The smell of strong coffee and fried food wrapped around him. The place was nearly empty, save for an old man reading a newspaper in the corner and a waitress wiping tables with slow, tired movements. Bentley shook the rain from his hair, ready to bark out an order, ready to be invisible like he always was in places like this. But then, he saw her, and the world stopped. She moved with a kind of weary grace, her golden brown hair escaping its messy braid, her caramel skin glowing even under the diner's harsh, fluorescent lights. A single strand of hair fell across her face, and with a tired sigh, she brushed it back, unaware of the way his heart stumbled. Bentley couldn't breathe. He couldn't think. Who was she? Who was this girl who looked like she had stepped out of every dream he never dared to have? Their eyes met. A brief, electric second, and Bentley felt something inside him crack open. In her hazel gaze, he didn't see curiosity or awe or hunger. He saw strength. He saw sorrow. He saw longing, raw, unhidden, painfully beautiful. For the first time in years, Bentley Maxwell felt something real spark inside him. He made his way to the counter, sliding onto a squeaky stool. His movements were automatic. His mind was still tangled in the wonder of her. She approached him, her tired smile polite, professional. "What can I get you?" she asked, her voice soft, carrying the weight of long hours and quiet dreams. "Coffee," Bentley managed to say, though he barely heard himself. She nodded, moving to pour him a cup, her movements efficient but graceful, like a dancer trying not to be noticed. He watched her pour the steaming liquid, watched the way her fingers trembled ever so slightly. Was she cold, tired, sad? He wanted to know everything. When she slid the cup in front of him, their fingers brushed. A spark shot through Bentley's veins, so fierce, so real, he almost flinched. She pulled her hand away quickly, her cheeks coloring in a blush so pure it made his heart ache. Bentley sat there, cradling the warm cup between his palms, watching her move around the diner. Every laugh she forced, every sigh she tried to hide, every tiny moment she thought nobody saw, he saw them all. The storm outside raged on, thunder growling low like a warning. But inside the diner, a different kind of storm was brewing, one that neither of them could see coming. Bentley had faced ruthless businessmen, greedy tycoons, desperate women, cold betrayals. He had built walls so thick not even a wrecking ball could break them. But somehow this girl, this stranger wiping ketchup stains off a cracked booth, had slipped right past every defense without even trying. He didn't know her name. He didn't know her story. All he knew was that if he left this diner without learning more, without hearing her voice again, he would regret it for the rest of his life. For the first time, the mighty Bentley Maxwell, the man the world called unshakable, felt his heart tremble, and he liked it. He sat there long after his coffee went cold, hypnotized by the girl who didn't even know she had just changed the course of his entire life. He didn't know it yet, but this stormy night, this small, forgotten diner, would become the beginning of everything he had ever longed for. And Jasmine Sandy, the girl everyone desired but nobody truly knew, was about to meet the one man who would see her, all of her, and never look away. In a town as small as Crestwood, secrets had nowhere to hide, and neither did whispers. It didn't take long before the whole town knew. The mysterious Bentley Maxwell, the millionaire, kept coming back to Maggie's diner. Not for the coffee, not for the food, but for her. At first the gossip was harmless, curious, amused. "What's a man like that doing here?" the old ladies would mutter behind their teacups. "Slumming it?" the teenage boys snickered, jealousy thick in their voices. But as Bentley's visits became more frequent, sometimes twice in one day, sometimes sitting for hours just to see Jasmine smile, the whispers grew sharper, meaner. Women who had once pitied Jasmine's loneliness now watched her with narrowed eyes, thick with envy. Men who had once tried and failed to win her heart now seethed with bitterness. "You're just a fling to him," they sneered whenever Jasmine walked past. "He's rich. You're just you. Girls like you don't end up with men like him." Each word hit Jasmine like a stone to the chest. She tried to ignore them, keeping her head high, her smile steady. But the wounds bled inside her, silent and deep. Still, no matter how much they whispered, no matter how cruelly they looked at her, Bentley kept coming. He didn't care if the diner was full of glares or if the waitress at the counter shot Jasmine nasty glances when she refilled his cup. Bentley saw no one but her. He wasn't like the others. He didn't shower her with empty compliments or promises draped in lies. He didn't treat her like a trophy, something pretty to hang on his arm. Number Bentley wanted to know her, truly know her. In quiet moments between orders, he would lean in and ask, "What was your favorite childhood memory?" Or, "What do you dream about when no one's looking?" He listened, really listened. Like her words were treasures he was collecting, one by one. Nobody had ever asked Jasmine about her dreams before. Nobody had cared to hear about the little girl who used to pick wildflowers and pretend they were royal bouquets. Or the teenager who stayed up late reading books about distant places, longing to escape. Or the young woman who sometimes cried herself to sleep, wishing someone would love her for her heart, not her face. And Bentley didn't just ask. He remembered every word, every dream, every fear she dared whisper. Some nights after the diner closed, they would walk slowly down the quiet, lamp-lit streets of Crestwood. The stars above them seemed to burn brighter those nights, the cool air sweet with the scent of jasmine and rain. Bentley would offer his arm, and Jasmine, shy at first, would eventually slip her hand through it. One night, under a sky so clear it looked like it had been polished, Bentley stopped walking. He turned to her, his face serious, vulnerable in a way that stole her breath. "Jasmine," he whispered, his voice rough with emotion, "you are the most real thing I've ever known." Her heart thudded painfully in her chest. She wanted to believe him. Oh, how badly she wanted to. But even as their bond deepened, danger slithered closer. Not everyone in Crestwood was content to watch quietly. There was one man in particular, Travis Reed, who couldn't bear the sight of Jasmine smiling at Bentley. Travis had once tried to court Jasmine, years ago, all sweaty palms and cruel words hidden under forced smiles. She had turned him down politely, then more firmly when he wouldn't take the hint. He had never forgiven her. Now, watching her light up around Bentley, Travis's resentment curdled into something darker, something vicious. He started small, cold stares, muttered insults when she passed by. Then the rumors began. "She's trapping him for his money," Travis hissed at the bar. "Just another gold digger, playing sweet." His lies slithered through the town like poisonous smoke, warping minds, feeding the bitterness that already festered in so many hearts. "She's not his kind," others whispered darkly, their words thick with racism and jealousy. "He'll see soon enough." Soon, even people Jasmine had known all her life started treating her like a stranger. The florist who once gave her extra petals now avoided her gaze. The grocer who used to chat about the weather suddenly found other customers to help. The weight of their judgment pressed down on her, heavier with each passing day. And Jasmine, soft-hearted and terrified of ruining the only real thing she'd ever known, made a heartbreaking decision. She tried to pull away. She began refusing Bentley's invitations with shaky smiles. She made excuses, pretended to be busy, pretended not to ache inside when he looked at her with confusion and hurt. "You deserve better," she whispered to herself late at night, hugging her pillow, tears soaking the fabric. "You deserve someone the world won't hate you for loving." But Bentley Maxwell was not a man easily shaken. When she stopped answering his texts, he came to the diner. When she dodged his visits, he waited until her shift ended. And one evening, as she hurried down the street, trying to escape both him and the ache in her chest, he caught up to her. He grabbed her hand. Warm, strong, unyielding. She turned, tears burning her eyes, ready to plead, ready to lie. But Bentley just pulled her close, cradling her face between his palms, his gaze fierce, his voice low and trembling. "You're scared," he said, more a fact than a question. "But you're not protecting me, Jasmine. You're only breaking my heart." She choked on a sob, the dam inside her shattering. "I don't want to ruin your life," she cried brokenly. "They'll never accept me, Bentley. They'll never accept us." Bentley smiled then, a raw, beautiful smile that cracked open all his polished coldness. "Let them talk," he said, brushing her tears away. "Let them scream. Let them hate." He leaned in, his forehead resting against hers, their breath mingling. "I choose you, Jasmine Sandy. In every lifetime, in every world, I would always choose you." And in that moment, wrapped in his arms, wrapped in his certainty, Jasmine realized that real love didn't bow to hatred. It didn't shatter under ugly words. It burned brighter, and together they would stand against it all. Together they would be unstoppable. The evening air was cool when Jasmine climbed the worn steps to her tiny apartment above the flower shop. She was tired, her feet aching from hours of rushing between tables, but a small, secret hope bloomed inside her. Maybe Bentley would stop by again tonight, just to see her smile. Maybe they could steal another moment beneath the stars, away from the world's cruelty. But as she reached her door, that fragile hope shattered. There, taped crookedly to the peeling wood, was a single piece of paper. The words, scrawled in angry black ink, twisted her stomach into knots. "Stay away from Bentley Maxwell, or you'll regret it." Her heart slammed against her ribs. Her hands trembled as she tore the note down, staring at it as if it might catch fire from the heat of her fear. Tears blurred her vision. The world around her blurred too. The gentle hum of the streetlights, the rustle of leaves in the wind, the distant sound of laughter from the diner down the road. Everything faded except the crushing terror in her chest. Someone wanted her gone, not just whispered insults anymore, not just cruel gossip behind her back. No, this was a threat, and they weren't bluffing. Jasmine slid down the door, curling her knees to her chest, the letter crumpled in her shaking hands. She sat there for a long time, feeling the night seep into her bones, feeling the dreams she dared to build crumble around her. She thought of Bentley, his steady gaze, his gentle touch, the way he made her feel seen, loved, cherished, the way he chose her every single day despite the hatred swirling around them. But love, she realized bitterly, wasn't always enough to protect the ones you loved. Sometimes love meant letting go. I can't ruin his life, she thought, the words slicing her soul in half. I love him too much to destroy him. So when Bentley arrived the next evening, stepping into the diner with that familiar hope lighting up his eyes, Jasmine was ready. Or at least she tried to be. She wiped her hands on her apron, steadied her breathing, and plastered a smile onto her trembling lips. "Hey, Bentley," she greeted, her voice higher than usual, too bright, too forced. He smiled back, that crooked, heart-stopping smile that always made her knees weak. He slid into his usual booth, waiting for her to come over. Jasmine clutched the coffee pot so tightly her knuckles turned white. She walked to him, each step feeling like dragging her heart through broken glass. She poured his coffee with shaking hands. He noticed, of course he noticed, and his brow furrowed in concern. "Jasmine, are you okay?" he asked gently. She forced out a laugh, brittle, hollow. "I'm fine," she lied. "Actually, I've been thinking." She sat across from him, pretending not to see the way he immediately reached for her hand, seeking that connection they always shared. She pulled her hand back. Pain flashed in his eyes, but Jasmine didn't stop. She couldn't stop. "You deserve better, Bentley," she said, her voice wobbling despite all her practice in front of the mirror. "I'm not enough. For you." The silence between them was deafening. Bentley stared at her for a long, long time. So long that she almost broke down and begged him to stay. His blue eyes, usually so full of quiet mischief, stubbornness, tenderness, were unreadable now. Finally, without a word, he slid out of the booth. He left a few crumpled bills on the table, his gaze never leaving hers, and then he turned and walked out into the night. Jasmine sat there long after he was gone, staring at the empty seat across from her, feeling the hollow place in her chest widen into a black hole. When her shift ended, she stumbled home like a ghost. She locked her door, shut her curtains tight against the world, and collapsed onto her bed. And then she cried. She cried so hard she thought her heart would never heal. So hard that her throat went raw, her body trembling with grief too big to be contained. Her soul cracked open, pouring out every ounce of love, fear, regret. "I'm sorry," she whispered into the darkness. "I love you too much to stay." Days passed, then weeks. Bentley never came back to the diner. At first, Jasmine told herself it was for the best, that this was what she wanted, that he was safer without her, but every day without him felt like drowning in slow motion. She missed everything. His voice, his laugh, the way he looked at her like she was magic. The town, meanwhile, watched with smug satisfaction. "Told you he wouldn't stick around," they murmured. "Rich boys always wake up eventually." She thought she could be something she's not. They smirked at her in the aisles of the grocery store. They whispered behind her back at the diner. They looked at her like a cautionary tale. And Jasmine let them. She let them think Bentley had gotten bored, that he had seen through her and left like they always said he would, because it was easier than admitting the truth, that she had broken her own heart to protect him, that she had lost the only man who had ever loved her for exactly who she was. But the town, cruel and small-minded, had no idea. They thought they'd won. They thought the millionaire had come to his senses. They thought Jasmine Sandy had been tossed aside, forgotten. They didn't know that somewhere out there, Bentley Maxwell was planning something. Something that would shake their hateful little world to its core. Because Bentley wasn't done. And neither, deep down, was Jasmine. It was a warm, golden afternoon, the kind of day when the sky stretched endlessly overhead, and the sunlight painted everything it touched with hope. Yet in the heart of the small town, tension crackled in the air like a brewing storm. Word had spread like wildfire. Bentley Maxwell, the elusive millionaire everyone thought had vanished, was back, and he wasn't alone. Luxury cars gleamed along the narrow streets, lined up like a royal procession. Camera crews hustled around the town square, setting up tripods and microphones, Locals gathered, whispering nervously, craning their necks to see what was happening. Is it a publicity stunt? Maybe he's opening a business? Why here of all places? No one had answers, only rumors, suspicions, and wide-eyed curiosity. Hidden in the swelling crowd, Jasmine Sandy pulled the brim of her hat low over her hazel eyes, her heart pounding so hard it felt like the earth itself might shake. She hadn't planned to come, but something, a tug deep inside her soul, had drawn her here, like a moth to a flame. And then she saw him. Bentley Maxwell stood at the center of it all, a black microphone gripped in his hand, looking every inch the powerful man he was. Tall, proud, his sharp black suit gleaming under the afternoon sun. But his face wasn't cold. It wasn't the detached, untouchable mask she had seen in magazines. No, Bentley's blue eyes blazed with raw, fierce determination. He was a man on a mission. The murmuring crowd fell silent as Bentley lifted the microphone to his lips. His voice rang out, strong, clear, unwavering, slicing through the heavy air. I came to this town thinking I had everything, he began. Money, power, status. The crowd shifted uncomfortably. Some glanced at each other, wondering where this was going. But none of that meant anything, not one damn thing, until I met Jasmine Sandy. A gasp rippled through the crowd like a wave crashing onto the shore. Heads turned, whispers hissed. People began searching for her. But Jasmine kept still, rooted to the spot, her hands trembling at her sides. Bentley's voice grew stronger, fiercer. You judged her by her beauty. You judged her by the color of her skin. You whispered lies. You spat venom. You tried to tear her down. Some faces flushed red. Others looked away, ashamed. Bentley paused, his chest rising and falling with emotion. But you didn't see her heart, he said, softer now. You didn't see her strength, her kindness, her fire. He stepped forward as if daring anyone to challenge him. I don't care about your rumors, your hate, or your small-minded ideas, Bentley said, his voice shaking slightly with emotion. I love her. Another collective gasp, louder this time. An old woman clutched her pearls. A young man gaped, open-mouthed. Jasmine clutched the edges of her jacket, tears brimming in her wide eyes. She tried to breathe, but her lungs seemed frozen, caught between hope and disbelief. Bentley continued, I would give up my fortune 1,000 times over just to have her by my side. The cameras clicked furiously. The reporters scribbled notes. But Bentley didn't care. His world had narrowed down to one point. One heart, one woman. He turned, scanning the crowd with wild urgency, his blue eyes desperate. And then he saw her, their eyes locked, across the sea of people, across the walls built by fear and hatred. Jasmine Sandy, Bentley said, his voice trembling for the first time. Will you marry me? The words hung in the air, bold and reckless, a spark waiting to ignite. For a moment the world froze. Nobody moved, nobody breathed. Time itself seemed to hesitate. Jasmine's knees buckled slightly and she swayed, overwhelmed by the tidal wave of emotion crashing over her. This isn't real, she thought wildly. This can't be real. But it was. It was more real than anything she had ever known. Tears streamed down her face, blurring her vision. She didn't think. She didn't hesitate. She ran. Bursting through the stunned crowd, stumbling, gasping, she ran straight to him. The man who had risked everything to love her openly, fearlessly. Bentley dropped the microphone, his arms outstretched, his face breaking into a wide, aching smile that made the sun seem dim. Jasmine flew into his arms, and he caught her as if she were the most precious thing on earth. He lifted her high, spinning her around, his laughter broken and joyful and full of tears all at once. She clung to him, burying her face in his neck, sobbing with happiness. Stay with me forever, Bentley whispered against her ear, his voice raw, fierce, and tender. I will, Jasmine choked out. Always. For a heartbeat, the crowd remained frozen in shock. And then, slowly, hesitantly, a cheer broke out. It started with one clap, then another, until the whole town square erupted into applause. cheers, whistles. Some faces still wore scowls, arms crossed in bitter defiance. But many, so many, smiled. Some wiped away tears. Some realized, maybe for the first time, that love could tear down walls they thought were made of iron. Jasmine and Bentley stood there, wrapped in each other's arms, as the sun bathed them in golden light. Two hearts defying the hate of a world that had tried to tear them apart. Two souls finding their home in each other, against all odds. And as Jasmine looked up into Bentley's shining blue eyes, she realized something. She wasn't just loved. She was chosen, cherished, and she would never be alone again. Bentley and Jasmine's wedding was not grand, but it was magical. It wasn't about money or appearances. It was about two hearts beating as one. In time, the same town that once judged them learned a hard lesson. True love doesn't care about color, class, or wealth. Jasmine and Bentley opened a community center, helping young people chase their dreams, no matter their background. They taught forgiveness, they taught love. And every time Jasmine looked at Bentley, she remembered the night when, despite the world's hate, one man's love made her heart tremble and healed it forever. Love sees no color. No amount of hate can destroy a heart built on courage, trust, and kindness. Racism divides, but love, real love, builds bridges that last forever.